There we go. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to use the chat box. At the end, we'll make sure to leave plenty of time for any of your questions. So we've talked a lot about medical aid in dying, and we hope that you've learned some helpful information. This training is for California and the Southwest states, of which medical aid in dying is authorized in California, Colorado, and New Mexico. While we are currently working on trying to get medical aid in dying authorized in Nevada, it's unlikely to pass in Arizona, Texas, and Utah at this time. We have found that we make better allies when we approach the subject of death, first starting off discussions about advanced care directives. Many people still shy away from conversations about death and may not be open to jumping right into a conversation about medical aid in dying. Additionally, different cultures hold different beliefs about death and the dying process. So starting conversations around advanced care directives will help to normalize conversations about death and also help people plan ahead to document and receive the care that they want if they're unable to speak for themselves. As we've also discussed, only about 1% of the population uses medical aid in dying in states where it's authorized, while everyone over the age of 18 should have an advanced care directive. So today we're going to discuss advanced care directives, addendums, and resources available to help people plan for an end-of-life experience that matches their values, beliefs, and priorities. And today we'll be speaking to you as if we're presenters, just so you guys get a feel of how you can give presentations to your community. Next slide. So procrastination is the enemy. There's a quote here that I want to read out. So Cecilia said, "One thing I wished I had done before getting sick and being hospitalized was to fill out and share my advanced care directive with my family and healthcare providers." So even though we may not be sick at the moment, it's really important to plan ahead. Next slide. And now we're going to do a little exercise. So if anyone has maybe a piece of paper or a pen or even your phone with the notes app. So I want everyone to just write down the 5 things that are the most important for bringing quality to your life. So some examples are walking, talking, driving, time with your loved ones. So we'll give everyone like 2 minutes to do that. I have my notebook here, so I'll go ahead and do it as well. We'll go ahead and give everyone like maybe 30 more seconds to write those 5 things. One of mine is talking, which I wish I could talk more normally today, but normally that's one of my qualities that I would like. All right, so we'll go ahead and advance and just keep that list handy because we're going to use it later on in the training. So next slide, Nico. Cool. All right, so we have the end of life decisions guide, which helps you focus on what you want. We'll now talk about some of the resources in the booklet in more depth. So some of the topics that we're going to go over are the My Particular Wishes, the Advanced Directive, the Hospital Visitation Form, and the Sectarian Healthcare Directive. Next slide. So Compassionate Choices has a My Particular Wishes addendum, which you can add to your advanced directive to state your wishes regarding specific life-sustaining therapies. It's 10 questions about whether you want treatments like antibiotics, dialysis, electroshock, steroid treatment, or any other life-sustaining therapies. You can simply check yes, no, or trial period. And trial period means that you'll allow doctors to see whether the therapy quickly reverses your condition, and you can discontinue the treatment if it doesn't. Next slide. So now back to our list. So now that you have your five things that you wrote down, I want you to cross off 2 of them. So now you'll be left with 3 things. So I'll give everyone like a minute or so to just cross off 2. Great, and we will go ahead, again, just keep your list handy. We're going to keep using it throughout the presentation. So now, next slide, please, Nico, and I'll turn it over to Dawn.
All right, thank you. So an advance directive is a critical part of planning, and the completion of your advance directives is going to help the people around you in the event that you can't speak for yourself, speak for you, and advocate your wishes. Advance directive is a general term for any document that contains instructions pertaining to a person's wishes related to medical treatment if they cannot make care decisions on their own. And some common advanced care directives are a living will, which is what I want, and a medical durable power of attorney, which is who will speak for me. This is someone referred to as a healthcare proxy or also a healthcare representative. Next slide. So advanced care directives by race and ethnicity. This slide shows the disparity in advanced directives for US adults 50 years and older by race and ethnicity based on a survey study. As you can see, Black Americans are almost half as likely to have advanced care directives than white Americans, 24% compared to 44%. In addition, while the Latino Americans are more likely than Black Americans to report having an advanced care directive, it's still well below what is reported by white Americans. And the Asian community is also much lower than the white community as well, even though we don't have the data for that on this particular slide. Okay, next slide, please. This slide is the Advanced Care Directives 101. And you specify in your advance what kind of medical care you would want if you become incapacitated. You can identify another person as well as an alternative person, should the first person be unavailable as your healthcare representative to make healthcare decisions on your behalf. In most states, you do not need a lawyer or a notary. In most states, you need only one witness to sign. And Compassion Choices does encourage everyone over the age of 18 to have an advanced care directive. Many states have their own forms with very specific guidelines that need to be used. And typically an advanced care directive includes a living will, which again is what you want, and the medical durable power of attorney, which again is who will speak for you. And it can include other documents that help spell out your wishes. A lawyer, as I stated earlier, is not required to fill out an advanced care directive. In most states, you simply need to sign in front of one other person. Just one required witness is all that you'll need. However, in some states, you do need up to 2. Next slide, please. Advanced directives are important, but they do not always guarantee that your wishes will be honored. Advanced care directives cannot cover every situation, and sometimes they just may not apply. It's important for your proxy or your representative to understand your approach to end of life care so that they can best assess what you would have wanted. It may be that you would want medical intervention under certain circumstances, but not other circumstances. And COVID-19 is a good example, as some people may change the type of treatment that they want. Even with an advanced directive, it may not be honored without advocacy from your proxy or your family members. For example, sectarian institutions may have policies that limit one's options for what they want at the end of life. Next slide, please. Who will speak for you, proxy or power of attorney? Your healthcare proxy is your voice when and only when you cannot communicate your wishes. You want to choose your proxy after much thought and discussion. Don't assume that a person will follow your wishes. You want to have several conversations to make sure that person understands and is comfortable with what your preferences are. And you can specify who you do want to speak for you. You can also specify who you do not want to speak for you in your advanced care directives. Next slide, please. Choosing a healthcare power of attorney. Some things you want to consider: are they assertive? Are they comfortable talking about death? Do they live nearby? Will they respect my decisions? And some options for who to choose for a healthcare power of attorney are family members or friends, a neighbor, member of your faith community. Local senior services may have volunteers or geriatric case managers who will do this for a small fee. And you can also talk to elder law attorneys about acting as a proxy if you don't have other options available. In selecting a representative, you want to ask yourself, are they assertive? Are they going to provide advocacy for you? You do want someone who's comfortable talking about death and making difficult decisions. And they need to understand where you're coming from and be willing to honor the requests that are important to you at the end of life. In some cases, it may be better to ask a nearby friend whom you trust instead of a distant family member. Family may also become overwhelmed or overcome by grief, and it might be difficult for them to make decisions that honor your wishes. You can consider asking a neighbor or a member of your faith community, and when discussing your request, you want to let them know that there is no financial liability attached to the role. Local senior centers and elder care agencies might have programs available that provide volunteers to help out with the service as well. Again, you can get an attorney to help out with this, but it's not usually required. There are some attorneys who specialize in elder law, and they might be willing to take on the role of a healthcare power of attorney for you, usually for a fee. Okay. And once you have your paperwork completed, you might be wondering what to do now. You want to share your wishes with your medical proxy, with your doctors, as well as your loved ones, and distribute copies of your advance directives. Keep them in places that are accessible and safe. see. You want to assess your goals of care throughout your life and update your advanced care directives regularly. You can at any time get rid of old wishes and replace them with new ones simply by rewriting your directives. You do want to give signed copies to your designated healthcare representatives, as well as keep some in an obvious place. You want to bring copies to your doctor. They can put those directly into your medical records and have them on hand at any time. They can scan them in for you. And you do want to review your documents regularly. If you update your advanced care directives, which you can do at any time, discard the document you no longer want and replace it with a revised version. And share the revised version as well. And let the people that you know who have the older copies know that those are no longer your current wishes and provide them with new documents. Review advanced care documents when one of the 5 Ds occurs. As a reminder, that is often used, it is the 5 Ds that the advanced care documents should be reviewed at a minimum when you start a new decade, when someone close to you dies, when you go through a major family change, such as divorce, or if you receive a new diagnosis or experience a significant decline in health. Next slide. Your doctors should be partners in your medical care. You want to find practitioners who care about your values and are committed to honoring them. Communication is key. Compassionate Choices has some online resources, such as the Trust Card and the Diagnosis Decoder, that are designed to help facilitate communication with doctors. As shown on the slide, you can also share a letter containing your wishes with your medical providers if you find your doctor cannot honor your wishes. It is perfectly acceptable to look for another physician if you find that there's just not enough time during your appointments to talk. You can ask when making an appointment for additional time to discuss your end of life wishes. This conversation is typically covered by Medicare. It's important to note that your physician might not be there at the hospital or will not be there in the ambulance. And that's why if you have a serious health condition or illness, you want to have your advanced care directive on your person or your purse or carrier bag and share it with the local hospital or your facility if you are living in a care facility. It's also where your proxy and loved one can make a difference. Okay, the next slide brings us back to Leslie and our exercise.
Yep, so we are back with our list. So now I want you to cross out 2 more of them. So we'll give everyone maybe 30 seconds to cross off their last 2. Great, and now you should have just 1, which is the most important thing remaining, and we'll get back to that in a few more slides. Next slide, please, Nico. So in this section, I'll be talking about different addendums and documents that you can add to your advanced directive. They're all optional, but they are all very useful. Next slide, please. So you should carefully check out facilities in advance to see whether they'll honor your wishes. You also want to make sure that your wishes to stop medications and treatments will be respected. It's important to confirm that you'll be getting the pain medication needed to feel comfortable. On our website at Compassionate Choices, you'll find some of these resources, which include the Sectarian Healthcare Directive That's an addendum to clarify that your wishes supersede those of any institution's religious policies, and that you wish to be transferred if any facility refuses to follow the preferences that you've outlined in your advanced care directive. We also have the assisted living facility rider, which is a contract rider for people who live in assisted living facilities and would like to stay there until they die. This will ensure that an individual's home is suited to their choices. And we also have the hospital visitation authorization form, which enables people that are not traditionally recognized as family members to gain priority visitation rights. Once completed and signed, it should be kept with your advanced care directive. And all of these forms can be found in our end-of-life decisions guide, which you can download on our website. However, if you do choose to just do one thing, it's very important to just fill out that advanced care directive. Next slide. So it's important to be aware that your advanced directive will not be effective in the event of a medical emergency. Ambulance and hospital emergency department personnel are required to provide CPR unless they are given a separate directive that states otherwise. These directives, called do not resuscitate orders, are designed for people whose poor health gives them little chance of benefiting from CPR. These directives instruct ambulance and hospital emergency personnel not to attempt CPR if your heart or breathing should stop. You should discuss with your doctor whether such an order would be appropriate for you. And the pre-hospital medical care directive, or an out-of-hospital DNR form, that's another important form that informs emergency personnel outside of a hospital setting that if you stop breathing or your heart stops beating, they are not to start CPR, nor use equipment, drugs, or devices to restart your heart or breathing. An attending physician will not issue an out-of-hospital DNR order if the person requesting the order is not eligible for it. Most physicians will only sign such a document for a person who is terminally ill or extremely elderly and frail and mentally capable of making such a request. Next slide, please. So we also have the PULSed form, which stands for Physician Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. And in some states, it's the MOLST form, which is Medical Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. So this form covers items like whether to administer CPR, ventilation, and other inventions like feeding tubes. It's recommended when you have a serious illness, and your doctor is the one that makes the determination and has to sign it. Next slide. So now everyone should have their one thing left written down, and I'll take a moment to see if anyone wants to share what their most important item was. So feel free to unmute yourselves if you want to share your one item.
Communication with those around me.
Yeah, it's really important. Thank you for sharing, Rosemary. I'll share mine in the meantime, but mine was time with my family. Anyone else want to share?
A sense of curiosity to keep myself mentally stimulated.
That's a great one, Marcia. Thank you for sharing.
I just said mine was being mentally competent to be able to take part in whatever's going around me. If I'm not mentally competent, pull the plug.
Thank you for sharing, William.
For mine, I put just like making sure that the funds that I've set aside are allocated the way that I want them, which I feel a little embarrassed that it came down to like money for me, but that's what mattered.
Thank you for sharing, Kamna. Great. Okay, we will move on to the next slide. Thank you everyone again for sharing. And now we'll open it up to the Q&A section of it. Yeah, the goal of these trainings is just to really have everyone, be comfortable giving presentations. Dawn is one of our volunteers, and, I just asked her if she wanted to be part of this presentation, and she did such an amazing job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, you can either unmute yourselves or drop it in the chat box.
I just wanted to comment to Kamna that, thinking about your financial situation means that you have to have the mental competency to be aware of that is a concern. So it makes sense to me.
Same. I want to go on that and say, I feel like for myself, I'd want to make sure that, who I wanted to make sure was taken care of, is taken care of. Because I feel like that's just kind of like who I am by nature, to make sure that those around me will be okay if I'm not around. So I relate to that.
I just wanted to add to that that's the reason why you have a will, or you have a trust, or you have those things in place so that legally they can be instituted the way you exactly want it to happen. Because if it's just a good wish and a thought, that's all it will ever be. And if somebody in the family is taking over, it may not happen the way you want. So it's just equally imperative to doing all of this to make sure you have that in place, set up in a trust or designate who the executor, or have that legally done so that you know, and you don't have to wonder, you don't have to worry. It will be taken care of, exactly executed the way you want it to happen, not how somebody else has decided it should happen.
Yeah, and I liked the part in the presentation too, where she was talking about like communicating that to those people too, like here are the documents and everything, so they have what they need. If someone pushes back or says like, that's not what it is, it's like they shouldn't be scrambling like to prove it. Like it should be really easy for them to have that documentation and know that it's been written down.
I think Fred and I are just redoing our wills and end of life wishes. And I think the will is the easy part. I think the end of life wishes and so on is the more searching and difficult things to put in place.
One of the things my parents are doing or have done is that my mom had us to say what things of hers we want. Everybody gets to say, well, I want this. While she's still alive, she can say, okay. So then it's designated that way. And it will eliminate possible fights, but I think fights come when there's no unity in the family and stuff it all becomes about stuff rather than the life of the person that you are going to lose. So, but that's what they did, just to make sure that gets cleared up. We all got to say she designated while she was living. So if there was any frustration with that, then you could take it to her and say, well, that's not what I want. I want whatever it was. So yeah.
That's a great idea, Cheryl. Thank you for sharing that. I don't know if there's any questions, but what I also did want to point out, we do these presentations quarterly. So if any of you ever want to co-present with us, like Dawn did today, feel free to email us and then we can just send you the slide deck. Because these slide decks, if you need them for any presentation, we have dementia ones, advanced care planning ones, and they'll have the speaker notes, so you'll have all the information.
And can we access all of these to go back and review or replay?
Yes, I believe we're going to be sending the recording and the slideshow as well with the speaker notes, just so you have all the information.
Okay, perfect.
Is it, last week, I think she said that she would send everything at the end of the whole series. Is that the plan?
Yes, I believe so, right, Nico?
Yeah, usually after we wrap up the last training session, we'll provide a follow-up email and include all links to all the resources that we mentioned throughout the series. So that way it's all concise and you don't have to fish and look for each individual email separately. So so thank you for being patient and waiting on that. But we're hoping that way, once it's all together, you only have to look for it in one place. So.
That's a lot to read.
Yeah.
Yeah, next week is our final one at 11 as well, and it's going to be Angela. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Marcia, you're going to be joining her, right? Yeah, so that's exciting. So yeah, in our next series, we'll do it in a few months. If any of you are interested in joining us, just shoot us an email or give us a call, and we'll give you guys all the information that you need. And I'll give like 10 more seconds for any final questions or thoughts or anything. But in the meantime, again, I just want to thank you, Dawn, for joining us and giving such a great presentation.
Oh, it was great. I'd love to do it again.
I don't see any other questions. So I want to thank all of you for joining us again this week. And like I said, the next and final presentation will be next Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. So I hope to see all of you at that one as well. Thank you all. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye, everyone.